during a timeout, tensions boiled over. Jeudy shouted, waved off teammates, and squared up to Shedeur Sanders. It looked personal, but Sanders never raised his voice. No finger pointing, no flinch, just quiet eye contact and a head shake. That brief scene told the entire story. Sanders isn't rattled by chaos. He processes, absorbs, and leads. While Jeudy vented about missed targets, the film showed his own missed routes and lack of hustle. The exchange exposed more than tempers. It revealed who's invested in the team and who's just riding the...
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
As head coach Kevin Stefanski keeps dialing up high-risk calls with little payoff, Sanders is the one force to salvage broken drives. He's getting no favors from play design or player effort, yet he owns every misstep as if it's all on him. That's not damage control, that's leadership. And it's getting harder to ignore just how lopsided the blame game has become. The moment was brief, but it said everything. Jeudy, visibly frustrated, came off the field barking. His target? Shedeur Sanders. A quarterback under pressure, taking hit after hit, managing a struggling offense with minimal support from his coaching staff. And now, also expected to absorb the blame for a teammate's lack of effort. What Jeudy didn't expect was for the moment to explode, and for all eyes to see what really happened. The clip went viral, but not the way Jeudy probably thought it would. The outburst didn't paint him as passionate. It painted him as exposed. Because right before that sideline clash, he'd blown a route. The defense had given Sanders a clean look. The throw was placed where it needed to be. All Jeudy had to do was finish. Extend. Make a real attempt at the ball. Instead, he coasted. No jump. No urgency. No finish. A potential touchdown left on the field. That moment could have flipped the game. But instead of owning the miss, Jeudy redirected. The finger pointing, the sideline yelling. It was a cover for what the film would later confirm. He didn't bring the effort when it came to Sanders. He didn't even flinch. That reaction, calm, measured, composed, was the real story. It wasn't just about silence. It was about control, about the kind of leadership you can't teach. Because Sanders wasn't just taking on an angry receiver. He was holding the entire offense together, under relentless pressure, with coaching decisions that set him up to fail. Let's be clear. This wasn't just two players arguing during a tough game. This was a turning point. A defining snapshot of the difference between composure and has been playing behind shaky protection, under relentless scrutiny, and with a play caller who seems to specialize in high-risk, low-reward decisions. Kevin Stefanski has been dialing up 4th and 1 calls in no man's land, putting the offense in impossible spots. When they fail, and they do fail, guess who takes a fallout? It's never Stefanski. It's always Shedeur. And yet, week after week, Sanders stands at the podium, shoulders the blame, and keeps it moving. He doesn't throw coaches under the bus. He doesn't call out teammates. Even when the media twists the story. Even when the mistakes weren't his. He just owns it. That's what leaders do. Now contrast that with Jeudy. This isn't the first time effort has been questioned. It's not the first time his body language has told a different story than his words. Missed routes, minimal fight for the ball, sloppy execution in critical moments. And yet, when things go sideways, the frustration spills outward instead of inward. That's where this exchange exposed more than just a rift. It revealed mindset. You've got a quarterback who's getting hammered in the pocket, dragged by the media, let down by risky coaching, and still shows up locked in. Then you've got a receiver with inconsistent effort and a habit of disappearing in big moments. And he's the one yelling? The irony isn't lost on anyone. And the worst part? The cameras caught it all. There was no spinning it. No way to frame it as leadership tension or competitive fire. It wasn't that. It was one guy trying to lead through adversity and another guy cracking under it. People inside the league saw it. Former players saw it. Analysts saw it. The conclusion was the same. Sanders kept his head when it counted. Jeudy didn't. And let's talk about that effort, or the lack of it, because this wasn't just one play. It's a pattern. Failing to sell a route. Not finishing through contact. No elevation for contested balls. That stuff doesn't just affect stats. It affects trust. Quarterbacks need to believe their receivers are going to fight, that they're going to make the tough catches, that they'll show up in the red zone when the window is tight. When they don't, it changes everything. And when one guy is clearly not giving full effort and then turns around to blame the quarterback in public, it creates tension that's impossible to... But here's what makes Shedeur different. He doesn't respond emotionally. He stays locked in, doesn't retaliate, doesn't push the drama. He lets the moment pass and keeps focusing on the next drive. That restraint, that's maturity. And it's exactly what this team needs. Because Sanders isn't just dealing with one frustrated receiver. He's playing through inconsistent play calls, offensive breakdowns, and relentless criticism, and still managing to stay composed, still trying to win, still refusing to point fingers. He's not the problem. He's the only thing holding the offense together. Meanwhile, Stefanski's play calling continues to raise eyebrows. Aggressive decisions aren't new, but they're rarely supported by context. Going for it on fourth down deep in your own territory? That's fine if you're built for it. But when your receivers are blowing assignments, your offensive line is shaky, and your quarterback is under siege, it's reckless. And then, when it doesn't work, there's no accountability from the top. Just more questions for Shedeur. More headlines questioning his performance. That media narrative? It's broken. The focus keeps landing on Sanders, while the real problems, coaching gambles, receiver effort, protection breakdowns, get buried. And somehow, through it all, he never loses his cool. That's not normal. That's leadership. This exchange with Jeudy was a moment that highlighted it all. You saw the contrast, the difference in mindset. One guy letting emotion take over, the other keeping the bigger picture in mind. Sanders didn't win that moment by yelling louder. He won it by refusing to let someone else's chaos affect his focus. And that's the kind of quarterback teams build around. Now, where does that leave Jeudy? He's got decisions to make. Does he take this as a wake-up call? Or does he keep sliding into frustration and underperformance? Because right now, his effort is under the microscope. And the reality is, it should be, you don't get to blow off routes, give up on plays, and embark the guy who's been carrying your offense. That kind of behavior doesn't just get noticed. It gets remembered. And if things don't change, it won't be long before people stop wondering what's wrong with the system and start asking what's going wrong with him. The tape doesn't lie. The moment's out there. And the narrative is clear. Shedeur Sanders isn't just rising above the noise. He's silencing it. Let us know what you think. Was Jeudy completely out of line? Is Sanders getting the short end of the stick from the media and the staff? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button if you're watching the leadership gap grow every week. Subscribe for more breakdowns on the drama behind the stat lines. Because sometimes the biggest stories aren't in the box score. They're in the moments nobody forgets. And this one, no one forgetting it anytime soon. The sideline exchange between Jeudy and Shedeur Sanders didn't just go viral because of the yelling. It went viral because of the symbolism. What we witnessed was more than just a heated moment in a frustrating game. It was the embodiment of two entirely different mindsets colliding under pressure. And only one of them looked like a leader. Let's go back to that play. It wasn't just a missed opportunity. It was a glaring failure of commitment. Sanders delivered a throw that had a chance. Not a miracle shot, not a broken play. An actual, makeable opportunity. And Jeudy? He mailed it in. Didn't extend. Didn't fight. Didn't even try. He ran the route like it didn't matter. And then he got mad like it wasn't his fault. That's the part that stings. There's no hiding from effort. Not in this league. The tape doesn't lie. And in that sequence, it exposed Jeudy in real time. Not just to the fans, but to his teammates, to the coaching staff, to everyone watching on that sideline. You can recover from a drop. You can come back from a blown read. But once the effort is questioned, once the heart isn't there, that's what really starts to lose. In Sanders, he stayed composed. That composure isn't accidental. It's who he is. This isn't a one-off moment of maturity. It's a pattern. From game one, Shedeur has been asked to do more with less. Questionable blocking, Inconsistent play calling. Teammates who aren't always pulling their weight. And despite all that, he doesn't spiral. He doesn't crumble. He stays locked in, even when the wheels are wobbling around him. Kevin Stefanski has made a habit out of throwing Sanders into high-pressure, low-margin situations. Risky fourth and short calls in enemy territory. Aggressive plays when the offense is clearly off rhythm. These aren't gutsy calls. They're reckless. And when they go wrong, Stefanski doesn't absorb the heat. Instead, the questions fall on Sanders. Why didn't the play work? Why didn't he make the throw? Why didn't he bail everyone out? Because he's expected to be the savior, even when the system is collapsing around him. And yet, he still shows up, still stands in the pocket, still takes the hits, still answers the media's questions without throwing anyone under the bus. That's a level of professionalism and poise that most veteran quarterbacks don't consistently show. But Shedeur, he's doing it in the middle of a season that's asked more of him than it has of almost anyone else. So when Jeudy decided to turn his own frustration into a full-blown sideline moment, it didn't just reflect poorly. It backfired and the clip caught fire. But instead of the narrative being, Jeudy demands more from his QB, it became, Shedeur handles chaos while his teammates unravel. And rightly so, because that wasn't leadership. That was blame shifting. Plain and simple. And what does it say that Sanders didn't react? Didn't argue? Didn't escalate? He just stood there, listening, absorbing it. That's not passivity. That's discipline. That's a quarterback who knows yelling back isn't going to get the first down. It's not going to fix the drop balls. It's not going to reverse the blown route. It's not going to change Stefanski's next call. But what it can do is create a fracture in the locker room, and Shedeur wasn't going to be the one to let that happen. That's what leadership looks like when the pressure is at its peak. And again, this isn't the first time Sanders has taken a hit for something that wasn't on him. We've seen this before. In press conferences where he's taken responsibility for turnovers that were clearly the result of blown protections. In games where he kept playing through injury while teammates were jogging routes. In moments where coaching decisions put the team in bad spots. And yet Sanders faced the cameras and answered for it all. There's a reason his teammates still trust him. Not just because he makes the right reads. Not just because he keeps drives alive. But because he never throws anyone on the bus, even when he has every reason to. That earns you respect. That earns you trust. That earns you the right to lead. On the flip side, Jeudy's pattern of effort or lack thereof isn't just a bad stretch. It's a serious issue. When you see a receiver routinely slowing down on critical plays, avoiding contact, and failing to attack the ball, it sends a message, not just to fans, but to everyone on that sideline. It says, I'm not fully bought in. And then to follow that up with a public outburst, as if you've been wronged, that's the kind of move that alienates people. Because everyone saw what happened. Everyone saw the lack of urgency. And when you try to redirect that into anger at the quarterback who's been holding the offense together, it makes you look detached from reality. The sideline moment was a boiling point, but not for Sanders. Because you don't snap like that unless you're already under pressure. You don't shift blame like that unless you're already hearing the whispers about effort, about performance, about inconsistency. That outburst wasn't about one play. It was a public display of internal pressure. The difference is Sanders knows how to handle that pressure. He's lived in it all season, and he's never once let it bleed into the locker room dynamic. That's why, in the aftermath of this exchange, it wasn't Jeudy who looked like a leader. It was Shedeur. And what's even more telling is how the media handled it. Instead of dissecting Stefanski's reckless decision-making or questioning why Jeudy isn't being held accountable, the immediate reaction was to question Sanders. Again, but Sanders doesn't feed into the noise. He never has. He just keeps showing up, keeps owning his role, keeps pushing through the noise and leading the team, flawed as it is, through games that are far harder than they need to be. And at some point, that consistency, that poise, that unshakable presence, it becomes impossible to ignore. So the real story here isn't that Sanders kept quiet. It's why he kept quiet. Because yelling wouldn't have solved anything. It would have made a messy situation messier. And that's not who he is. He's not there to win arguments. He's there to win games. even if he has to do it with teammates who aren't pulling their weight, even if his head coach won't take accountability, even if the media keeps missing the real story. And if that's not the definition of a franchise quarterback in the making, what is? So now the question becomes, what happens? Does Jeudy take the hint? Does Stefanski adjust? Does the team finally rally behind the one player who's consistently shown that he's willing to carry the weight? Because if they don't, the gap is only going to widen between the guy who's building something and the ones holding him back. And if there's one thing this moment clarified crystal clear, no spin necessary. It's that Shedeur Sanders isn't just surviving, he's evolving. He's adapting to dysfunction around him with the kind of clarity that doesn't come from talent alone. That's mental toughness. That's emotional intelligence. That's leadership in its most unforgiving form. Think about it. How many quarterbacks in the league are expected to carry this much? He's got a head coach who plays roulette with fourth downs, a receiving core that doesn't always meet the moment, a media cycle that seems more interested in controversy than context, and a game plan that regularly puts him in high-risk, low-reward situations. Despite all that, Shedeur stays centered. Now stack that against Jeudy in this moment. Here's a wide receiver, gifted, no doubt, who completely abandons a route on a pivotal play, doesn't jump, doesn't stretch, doesn't fight for the ball. And when the crowd gasps and the cameras catch it, what does he do? He turns to the quarterback, yelling, gesturing, frustrated, not because he was failed, but because he failed and couldn't face it. That's what made this blow-up different. It wasn't about a miscommunication. It wasn't two players holding each other accountable. It was one player unraveling while the other refused to take the bait. And that refusal, that wasn't passive. It was controlled, intentional, strategic, because Shedeur Sanders knows the game inside the game. He knows leadership isn't about reacting. It's about choosing your moment. And that wasn't the moment. He knew the cameras were rolling. He knew the media would pounce. He knew every second of that interaction would be analyzed. And still, he didn't flinch, didn't lash out, didn't let emotion steal the focus. That level of self-discipline doesn't just show up. It's earned. Every week, this guy is playing quarterback and crisis manager. And while Stefanski keeps calling plays that look more like gambles than plans, Sanders has been forced to make something out of nothing. Again and again. Fourth and short in enemy territory with no rhythm. Somehow, Sanders is supposed to convert. Broken pocket? Make it work. Receiver stops running the route? Still your fault. And through it all, the media keeps funneling the same tired questions back to him. Why didn't the offense execute? Because when the effort is uneven and the coaching lacks direction, no quarterback, rookie or vet, can bail out every time. Yet that expectation keeps getting strapped to Sanders like a weighted vest. And he wears it. He doesn't complain. He doesn't deflect. He just absorbs it. And that's why this Jeudy moment hit so hard. It wasn't just a teammate yelling. It was a spotlight on everything Sanders has been holding in. All the drop balls. All the misassignments. All the bad calls. All the blame. And then, after all that, he's supposed to take one more hit. This time from the very guy who just blew the play? Come on. The restraint it takes not to explode right back? That's next level. That's leadership most people won't even understand until they're forced to do it themselves. Until they've had to keep a team together when everyone else is falling apart. Until they've had to stay calm while someone yells in their face for a mistake they didn't make. And that's why people are starting to see what's really happening. It's not just that Shedeur Sanders is poised. It's that he's rare. The kind of player who doesn't just lead when it's easy, but who finds stability when everything around him is unstable. That's the difference. That's the separator. Meanwhile, Jeudy's effort, or lack thereof, has become more than just a footnote. It's a trend. And in the NFL, trends become reputations fast. Because the film doesn't lie. The camera doesn't lie. And when you get called out for not going up for a ball, then respond with a sideline tantrum instead of accountability, people start to connect the dots. It's not just one play. It's a pattern of behavior. And once that starts, it's hard to shake. Especially when the guy you're blaming is still trying to lead the locker room through all of it. That's the split screen the entire football world is watching. On one side, a quarterback who continues to answer for everyone's mistakes, including his own, with humility, focus, and unshakable discipline. On the other, a receiver who hasn't shown consistent effort and just publicly unloaded on the wrong guy at the worst time. This wasn't about stats. It wasn't about who had the better game. It was about leadership under pressure. And only one of them passed the test. Because while the media focuses on volume, who yelled, who gestured, who looked fired up, the real story is in the stillness. The guy who stood there and took it, who let the noise roll off his shoulders and kept his eyes downfield. That's not weakness. That's power. And it's the kind of power that defines careers, not just with talent, but with presence. So now Jeudy's got a choice. Own it. Adjust. Show the work. Show the effort. Because right now, the image burned into everyone's mind is a guy yelling while standing in the wreckage of a play he failed to complete. He's got time to fix it, but only if he's willing to be honest with himself. As for Sanders, he doesn't need to change a thing. Keep leading. Keep showing up. Keep being the calm voice in a room that doesn't always deserve it. That's what real quarterbacks do. And the more the chaos swirls around him, the more obvious it becomes. He's not just playing through adversity. He's outgrowing it. He's becoming the guy you build around. The guy who survives the noise, the missteps, the bad calls, the teammate drama, and keeps the team steady. And not every team has that. Not every team deserves it. So if you've been watching this all unfold and thinking, why is this kid taking all the heat when he's the only one staying consistent? You're not alone. That's what this story has become. Not about a sideline spat. Not about a missed throw. But about the one person who's been quietly leading through every single ounce of dysfunction thrown his way. Let us know what you saw in that moment. Was Jeudy's outburst the final straw? Is Shedeur the only reason this offense hasn't fully collapsed? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like the video if you've been seeing the same cracks in the system. Share it with someone who's been blaming the wrong guy all season. And don't forget to subscribe, because we're just getting started. The noise is loud, but the leadership, that's silent. And Shedeur Sanders is showing what it really looks like. Week after week, play after play, moment after moment, even when no one else will.